Welcome to Creative Piecemeal. I'm Tammy Takeishi, a board-certified music therapist. Join me each week as a new guest from across the fine and creative arts spheres shares struggles, triumphs, laughs, words of wisdom, and more in authentic, thought-provoking, and inspiring interviews. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal. Today I'm with Dustin Douglas. He's part of the band The Electric Gentleman. He is the frontman, ferocious guitarist, singer-songwriter. He's joined by drummer Tommy Smallcomb and bassist Matt Gabriel, who are not here today, just talking to Dustin. But they're known to deliver a heavy dose of swagger, groove, and rock and roll attitude on the stage and in the studio. Their latest, For, the fourth studio endeavor from Dustin Douglas and the Electric Gentleman, is a raw, unapologetic blues rock mastercourse. It's a powerhouse album drenched in whiskey-soaked riffs and soaring rock and roll vocals that once again display Douglas's meteoric rise as one of the heaviest hitters in the blues rock world. I've had the pleasure of listening to it early, which is always a really cool thing about being a podcast host, is getting things early, and I love it. It jams. I mean, it's something that I feel like I could hear if I go out with friends, and no pun intended regarding electric, but you can feel the electricity. Like, you can feel the love that you put into it. You can feel the excitement and the energy in the music. And I didn't know until a few years ago that I liked blues rock at all. And it's nice to learn that about myself as an adult. It's like, oh, I like this genre, and I like this genre a lot. And so I'm just wondering, like, how did you get to this place? You know, who inspired you? What inspired you to become a musician, and particularly in this genre?
I think it starts back to, being a young child and just having rock and roll being played pretty constantly in the house and in the car. Very musical family. Although my parents don't play instruments, music was constantly on in my house, whether that be Aerosmith or Bad Company and some good classic rock. And then my grandparents also loved, my father's parents, my grandparents on that side, had a radio in the kitchen that they left on constantly. So there was always tunes there. And then my other set of grandparents always had a station here in Pennsylvania called Rock 107, which is a classic rock kind of station. So there was just music around all the time. And it was just rock and roll music. And then it was just embedded into me from a very young age. So I have to thank my grandparents and my parents for that.
Nice. And of course you play guitar. How did you come to that instrument?
Yeah, there always just seemed to be guitars around. Strangely enough, I always loved the adventure of like going into my grandparents' attics and kind of treasure hunting. I mean, I still kind of love doing that, whether it be at thrift stores or, yard sales but there were guitars in both of their attics, which is very interesting because no one played really. I guess my uncle on my one side did play, but there was just these magical guitars, and I was like, oh, what's this? And then from the time I was a child, my parents had would always buy me toy instruments and then real instruments. And then, at the age of 9, I started taking lessons for a few years, and that's where it all started.
Nice. So I'd love to talk about your album. It is the fourth studio album. How does it differ from the ones that came before?
That's a good question. I'd like to think that every record, I think every artist, musician likes to think that every album is kind of that much better because you're that much more experienced. And sometimes that's not always the case. But, if it's a band, that band knows each other that much more, every record. And this one was a little different of a recording process for us, where we weren't necessarily all there at the same time. We kind of did this more in a traditional sense of kind of recording certain things separately. So, going into it, I didn't know how that was going to work out. And then now that the dust has cleared, it actually, I'm very, very proud of this record. And ironically, I feel like it's some of our strongest work. That's all you could really hope for, I
had not heard of your band prior, but I mean, I'm a fan now for sure because, like I said, it's a genre that I found myself really enjoying as an adult. It reminds me of like SRV, like who doesn't love
Sure.
SRV?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. And yes, we converted you to a blues rocker now.
That's right. That's right. I'm not
I'll
just a
take the
regular hard rocker.
I'll take the blame. I'll take the blame. And I mean, we get the title of blues rock, and of course, the industry needs to put labels on things to put you in a certain lane. And
Sure,
but I
sure.
mean, we just play rock and roll. I mean, the way that I play guitar just happens to be blues influenced, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. But like my favorite bands, whether it's hard rock or heavy metal or pop or blues, no matter what, the ones I gravitate towards the most is the ones that have that kind of bluesy feel. I think blues is more of a feeling than it is a genre. There could be a bluesy solo in a pop song. There could be, Dimebag Darrell, I feel, was an extremely bluesy metal guitar player. I just think rather than a genre, it's a feel.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely get on board with that for sure. And especially in my line of work as a music therapist, the blues can really be very powerful, a very powerful medium of helping someone express their emotions. And I can imagine like for you in songwriting, I don't know your process, but I imagine it's very freeing to be able to just sit down and songwrite. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you do that and what you do?
It is very freeing. It's one of my main forms of therapy. And I feel like when I'm not being creative, I could feel that. It's definitely something that I can feel that is missing and that I need to do. I love that you're a music therapist. That was an option for me coming out of high school. I actually did my like high school graduation project on music therapy. And in a way, I still feel like I'm doing it in a different lane than you are, of course, but I think all music is therapy for sure. I commend you on what you're doing. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. But if I would have went a different route, we would have been colleagues. But yeah, songwriting, I mean, it's a weird thing. If I think other songwriters have said this, and I can vouch, if you say on Tuesday I'm going to sit down to write a song from 5 to 7, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to sit there, you're going to start doodling on the paper, and you're going to start, yeah, it's not going to work out to your favor. But if I'm sitting on the couch with my wife and we're watching something and I'm just strumming along, and then I'm like, oh, that could be something cool. I think honestly, it starts with something that I like, that catches my ear. That's the first thing. I kind of make music for myself, selfishly. I want to hear stuff that I'm not hearing out there, that I would like to hear. Yeah, the song, it just comes from the universe, and you just got to grab them, and it's really cool. It's also kind of daunting because you don't really know which ones to grab or what, because you kind of are the gatekeeper of that. So you could just got to trust yourself and trust your gut and trust your ear. And fortunately, I think there's a lot of people that like the music that I like. So yeah, you just got to be true to yourself in that respect.
Yeah, yeah. Totally, totally understand, totally get that. When it comes to lyrics, do you find that that's easy? Does it come easy, or is it sort of a, just when the lightning strikes situation?
Out of the entire process, I'd have to say it is the least easy part. I think it's mostly because of just the self-critical aspect of it. Now, there's exceptions to all the rules. Sometimes the music and the words just come together. There's at least one or two songs on every record that it just kind of wrote itself. And that's awesome. And I wish they were all like that, but they're not. Sometimes what I've learned with every record, more and more, I learned that to kind of let the lyrics kind of write themselves. You could really, I mean, there's lyric writing classes, there's lyric writing, and honestly, I think the best thing you could possibly do is really just be honest and say what you need to say and want to say. And I think the more vulnerable you are, the better it ends up being. But that's something you learn by writing some shitty songs, I think. And when you're first coming up and you're writing, just stuff that rhymes. Got my heart on the door and the floor and that kind of stuff. But then you start to realize, like, okay, I got to play these songs a lot, live. So you just got to dig down deep and realize that what you're going through, what you want to say, chances are there's a lot of people out there that are feeling the same thing. So you just have to be true to yourself and vulnerable, which is scary at times to get out there, and everybody thinks that the songs you write are autobiographical too, which isn't always the case. You could be a storyteller. So, but you got to put that all behind you and dig down deep and let it out.
I completely agree. I also songwrite, and
Awesome.
I always have, because it's part of my process, like just how I process life. But it's something I've done a lot more in the last few years, and especially as a grown adult, there's a lot more to process when you're an adult than when you're a teenager,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to see how my lyrics have changed and progressed, and like you said, I'm not rhyming as much, which is thank goodness.
Yeah, you become quite the cat in the hat there when you're younger, right?
Yeah, yeah. Obviously you love every song, and but is there one that just really is attached to some good memories of recording it or the process?
Man, it's there's a song on the new record, the upcoming record it's the last track on the record called Missing You. And we have kind of played in the restraints of radio friendly time songs, the 2 minute, 3 minute songs. And I finally was like, you know what? Over all these records over the years, we don't have like a song where we said, screw that, let's just have this really long opus kind of thing. So that's, man, I love the whole feel of it. It's kind of like a David Gilmour, Pink Floyd type thing that goes into this middle section jam solo thing that is very like John Bonham Zeppelin-esque. So it's like it's almost a culmination of like all this stuff that I love that we just didn't watch the clock and said, who cares if this doesn't ever get played on the radio? Like and that's just kind of one that comes to mind that really stands out because it's just there was no chains, there was no restrictions. Funny how that works, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what is a song that proved a little more difficult for you, whether it was in the actual songwriting process or the lyric process or recording?
Well, there's two that come to mind. So there's a song on the new record called "Every Dog Has His Day." Now that is something that my father said and still says as one of his lines. He's got a couple lines that he says, and that was one of them. And I always wrote it down. Like every record, I would write it down on the newspaper. I was like, one of these days, I'm gonna write a song. And the lyric of the song now finally is like my dad used to say, "Every dog has his day." It's like one that like was always around, but it took some time to finally get the words right, to have those words work well with the music. And it feels good to have that finally on a record, because it's just been floating around for years, that idea. And sometimes they happen when they are meant to happen. You'll force a song or write half a song, and it's not the time. There's no sense of putting something out that's half-assed if it's not the time. Let it do its thing. And then secondly, is this our latest single, "Drunk and Alone." That was like I remember sitting on a couch in my previous apartment, and I just kind of wrote the music, which is very like Tom Petty-esque. I'm a big Tom Petty fan. And then I had a rough lyric of the "Drunk and Alone" thing, and I guess I was feeling that at the time, and I'm gonna be celebrating like 2 years of not having a drink coming up on June 5th. So yeah, and it's not that I necessarily had a problem. I just knew that it was just like if I don't stop, it's just like you're never going to. So it's like, my life is so much better without it, and that's just me personally. Anybody could do whatever they want to do, but I feel like it really changed my life for the better. So that song, musically, I didn't know if it was going to fit on the record because it's more of a Americana type vibe of a song, which I love that to listen to. I didn't know if it was going to fit. And then vocally, it was very vulnerable. But at the end of the day, when it was time to kind of pick the tracks, I was like, man, I just got to give this song a chance. And I know that people are going to be able to relate to it. And I honestly, we've played it live a few times, and I play it live on some of my solo acoustic shows. And it almost feels like I'm playing a cover, which is the first time that I've ever felt that. And that's a good feeling for me. It's like that must be something special. I really love that song, and I think it's really gonna be around for a long time. I hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Nice, nice. What is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self when you were starting on this creative musical journey?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I think the number one thing, and you said it best using the word journey, is like the fun happens in the journey and not the destination. As a kid, you want to be on a tour bus, you want to be touring, you are so driven by that, and it consumes all of your energy. But while you're being consumed, you're not enjoying the processes. It doesn't matter if you're making $5 to play a song, like you're making somewhat of a living to play a song, which what's better than that? But more so than even making money is like you're like in your world, it's therapeutic. It's like you can go up on stage and dance like an idiot and dress up in goofy clothes and I mean, stop taking it so seriously. I think I spent a lot of years just being driven by and also setting expectations, because none of that is going to happen. It's not going to happen the way that you expect it to. And most of the time, it actually ends up being better than you expect. I wish I knew, what I know now when I was younger. For sure.
On that note, what advice would you give to someone who wants to go into the professional music business, songwriting business, and do what you do?
Yeah, I mean, times just have changed, and my heart goes out to, even bands that are starting up and want to play. There's less and less rooms, there's less and less, I mean, but also there's more opportunities where it's very easy that you could just upload your song, and of course it's a catch 22. My biggest thing is don't say no to any opportunity, even if it's out of your wheelhouse. And don't say no to any gig. Play as many gigs as possible, because that's where you really learn your craft. You could sit in your basement or your bedroom or your rehearsal space and you could woodshed for hours upon hours. But until you get out there and kind of learn what affects people, and you see a song, even if you're playing covers, or you see a song that affected one guy, then to go to that route, for the rest of the night. It just takes one guy to get down and feel it. And then you kind of know, but that stuff you don't learn without getting, whether you, play whatever, play in the corner of a restaurant or a coffee shop, or there's so many gigs out there. And if you're a guitar player and a singer, take advantage of taking an acoustic guitar and your voice and playing solo shows and bring it back to your band, because it only makes everything that much better. So you just have to get out there. And I mean, in any other world, that would be like what they would call an internship, in another profession, or on the job training, or, that's the stuff that makes, and play with people that are better than you, because it only makes you better. It really does.
Excellent advice, and I concur for sure. Experience is so helpful.
It really is. I mean, in life in general, it really breaks up the monotony of the anxiety and of it all. The experiences are really what makes you that much better.
I have a fun question to follow that up. Regarding gigs and concerts, do you have any traditions in terms of meals that you like to eat before or after?
Nothing. I like to go on stage with a somewhat empty stomach. So just because I'm a little more physical in the way that I play and my stage movements, so I've made the mistake of having maybe a large dinner beforehand, and it just doesn't. It's like it's a little slower of a show. And it's so yeah, I usually get my meal to go for after the show. Maybe like a banana or a protein bar an hour before or something. But yeah, I keep it light. I keep it light and empty. You learn that the hard way.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say quite a lot of people are like that. They keep it light
Good.
or not too much, I
Yeah.
notice, regarding pre-concert meals. Or they eat something big but like really, really several hours ahead, you know?
Yeah, that would be as well, give it some time to digest, not digesting while you're on your fourth or fifth song.
Yeah. What is a place that you would love to travel and perform at?
Let me think. My first knee-jerk reaction is to say anywhere that'll have us. But I think there's some bucket list places that, like a Red Rock we hope to do. And there's just a number of festivals that would be really cool. The Danny Wimmer festivals that we hope to play someday. And whether that be Welcome to Rockville or Aftershock, there's a lot of those. There's so many beautiful venues out there now. It's almost hard to find a bad one. So yeah, I'll go with you. Anywhere that will have us, I'm happy with. There's no such thing as a bad gig. You got to get something out of it.
Mhm.
Even a bad gig is a lesson.
Yeah, yeah, there's learning experiences. It's information. It's like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to do that again, or we're not going to set up the stage that way again, or
Right.
we're going to lead with this song instead of that song, you know.
It's a constant learning process. Totally. Set list wise, it's amazing how the set list will change from the first couple of shows from a new record cycle to the end, and that you don't learn that kind of stuff unless you're quote unquote do it wrong, whatever that means. But yeah,
Yeah. What are some bands that you're listening to right now?
I'll give you like the last things I've listened to. I've listened to some of the new Turnstile stuff off the record that they were going to put out. I've been listening to Metallica a lot because I just saw them last week. And I've been last night I found this really super cool Prodigy song, which I've been spinning a lot, which is very interesting. My taste is quite eclectic. I've also been listening to this new record because I have to learn it. So I've been unfortunately I've been doing my homework, so I've been listening to a lot of me, which gets real old real fast. But those are definitely, I mean, there's so much awesome stuff. I love finding new artists. I'm a king of like Shazam. I think Shazam is super cool because I'm just like, what song is this? Holding it up to the speaker in the grocery store, or um I'm no stranger to that. I love, there's a lot of people that may say, there's no good music anymore, but it's out there. It may not be mainstream, but man, there's a lot of good music out there. You just have to kind of search for it a little bit, but not even that hard. The one positive thing with the music services, although they struggle to pay musicians what they should get paid, and that's a whole nother story. But at least they can veer you in the direction to discovering new music. Which is that's the name of the game. There's a like a meme, or it's like friends that turn you on to new music are important kind of thing, and that it's very true. I've been listening to I got into a little Beatles kick again. I was listening to like the Rooftop unedited performances the other day, and I'm all over the place. I listen to a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff people wouldn't think I listen to. I listen to, which is fun.
Yeah, it's good to have cast a wide net because it enriches our lives, but it also informs us as creative songwriters.
Absolutely. The music I play, it's like not necessarily what I want to listen to because it's like my job. So it's like sometimes I want to listen to trendy instrumental restaurant playlists or something, and then you get super inspiration from that, which is, I find it hard to maybe get inspired by music that is similar to what I make. I get more inspired by things that I wouldn't think of, or whoa, that's cool, and then I take it back and plug in an amplifier and kind of recreate that. Beautiful about it.
Excellent. So, a couple more questions. What is something or several somethings that you like to do when you're not making music?
This is a very hot topic. I wish I had more things. I wish I had more hobbies. I have just me and my wife just pretty recently bought a house. My new hobby is housework. So whether it's on my riding lawnmower, or getting the weeds out and weed whacking and cutting the grass and getting the pool ready. So that's my new hobby, which is nice because I just throw on my AirPods and put on a podcast and kind of get lost in it, which I needed because I tend to be very career driven and I need kind of an outlet that isn't music based. I also like I do love like exercising, I go to the gym every day and I do that whole thing. That's not too glamorous or cool of a hobby, but and then yeah, I mean I love, I got a mountain bike. I'll take the mountain bike out when I have time. My brother drags me out golfing, which is fun. I'm not the greatest at it. I'm not the worst at it, but it's nice to kind of just get out there and not think about the business or not think about the new record. And, I just love spending time with my family and hanging out with my wife and going to concerts. Going to concerts is something it's like, that's the reason I got into this in the beginning. It's like, I think a lot of us musicians, like when we're off, we find ourselves at a show still, or hanging out with friends that are on road crews or, which I still love. I still love going to shows. That's what it's all about. So those are some of my hobbies. I like to read. I like to start 10 books and not finish any of them. Yeah, as you can see some of them behind me here, but
Yeah.
yeah, those are my hobbies. I'd like to get some more. I bought a tennis racket. We'll see how that goes. I'll let you know.
There you go. Yeah. It's good to just dabble and do things and play and explore and have fun and, it's part of life.
Yeah, exactly. I will definitely not shy away from trying things that are. I've learned that feeling in your stomach that you get when you're trying something new that tells you to kind of turn away and don't try. That's actually like a feeling that I like to reverse and be like, okay, that feeling is telling me I should do this. Because on the other side of that anxious feeling is usually pretty good.
Excellent. Well, one final question. In your own words, what does it mean to live a creative life?
A creative life. I think that a creative life means and it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a quote unquote artist. You don't have to be a quote unquote painter. You don't have to, but creation is something where it's taking something that you love and have inside of you and getting it out. And then, then you make the decision of whether you want, to put it out into the world. But you can be creative without that. And I think it's something that all of us need in one way or another because it is quite a therapeutic release. For me, I'm blessed to have the ability to make music and then to create that music and then to put it out in the world where it doesn't become just mine anymore. That's my favorite part of the process is like it becomes this is watching it grow. It becomes a riff. I'm always after the ultimate riff or still searching. We'll always be searching, but it starts with that on the couch or during sound check. And then you write more of that song and then that song grows into let's take it to the band and let's jam it with the band. And then you spend time totally tweaking that. And then it goes to the studio and then you record it and then it gets mixed, then it gets mastered. And then it gets released and then it's not yours anymore. And it's easy to not appreciate that, but that's a really satisfying, very, very, very satisfying process. But I think everyone should be creative in a way because it is extremely therapeutic and beneficial to one's, mental health. I really do. Whether it's doodling on a piece of paper or get a paint set and just throw paint at a canvas in your garage. There's so many creative outlets. Gardening, the way you put your flowers together, it doesn't have to be what you think it is. But I think it's beneficial to the human, especially with the world being quite fast and loud and our phones and the constant everything. I think living a creative life may be a good way to shut it all down and to bring it back to zero.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Dustin, thank you so much for joining the show. Listeners, please check the show notes. Check out Dustin Douglas and the Electric Gentlemen whenever they go on tour or any gigs that they might have on the East Coast. And also check out their website. Their album 4 comes out on June 6th from Momojo Records. And as always, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Creative Piecemeal. We hope today's episode left you feeling inspired. This podcast is independently created and produced by the host, Tami Takaishi. More details about today's guest can be found in the show notes, along with links to the podcast's socials, merch store, and ways to support arts organizations AHA Broadway and New Normal Rep, both near and dear to Tammy's heart. Don't forget to visit creativepiecemeal.com, the official podcast website, where you can leave fan mail, write a review, explore Tammy's blog, and discover the growing collection of episodes. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Alex Rapetti. Additional narration by Dante Jace. Let's keep celebrating creativity in all its forms.